I know some people, I did make some meetings with those like, but I'm some. I see, that's awesome. So, the same way. Is it enough? No. People don't know. What is more? Again, yeah. This might be magically brown. We have a couple of thoughts. Yeah, it's not yet. Oh, I.
Hi, Channing, I'm on. Hmm? Thanks for caring about me. I'm good. I'm just using the volume. I'm on audio.
Wait, hold on, maybe you're not.
Sure. Jason.
I love cooking.
I love you. All of Precinct loves you.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yes. He's a huge reason for us being here. We'll hear about that.
We like a horse. Hey, Jim. Hello.
Good to see you. It's a song. That's also. Awesome. How's it going? I love it. Let's see. I love it. I got it.
When we were almost. We love it.
This is a big no. She's gonna be more smart. Back here, no comment. That's a lot.
It's really.
Geometric jewelry technical issue. Always something.
So it's some.
One thing it's another. Yeah. Okay, now we can get started. Hi, y'all. I'm Akuna Buka. I'm the director of volunteer program here at the Labor Community Strategy Center. Welcome, first of all, to the space, especially for those who it's your first time coming. Some people traveled a long way. Some people got lost coming here, but you made it and you are welcome. So thank you for joining us tonight. I am really hoping that folks have spent some time taking in the physical space, not only what was here before, but what has been put here to transform the space. If you haven't, I'm hoping that after the event, you'll take some time to walk around and look at some of the artifacts that Rachel and Audrey worked very hard to put up. If you're new to the Labor Community Strategy Center, we are an organization based here clearly in the heart of South LA. And in terms of values, we are so totally in alignment and excited about Code Pink. We are an anti-imperialist, pro-Black organization. Eric Mann, someone's like, I'm ready to clap. Go ahead. Yeah, do your thing. Eric Mann, our co-director, offered one of the testimonies that is in this book, and some of you may have already read it, and if not, you'll be hearing from him very soon. But there is one quote, and I don't want to spoil anything, but there's one quote from his testimony, and he said, "What are we willing to do about it?" And I think we all know what that it is in the room. And if you want to know more about the Strategy Center, I encourage you to read through the timelines because then you can get a sense of what we have been doing from the 80s to the 90s to the early aughts to today. And right now, I'll just give you a very tiny taste of what we're willing to do about it. So at the Strategy Center, who I think is busy running, making sure something is working. He is our other co-director, Channing Martinez, right here. And there are several projects that we are currently involved in. One with our pro-environmental front is a Black Folks on Bikes campaign. So you might recognize that in LA, our public transit is an abomination. And particularly here in South LA, that is particularly an issue. And so we actually are part of a network, a coalition of organizations that are offering free e-bike rental to folks in South LA so that they're able to commute. Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah. I know most of us drove here and so, you know, it's not necessarily a big deal, but we have had members of our organization who have been able to get jobs that otherwise without an e-bike, they physically were not able to get to previously. So it's a life-changing opportunity for some of those folks. Also, in terms of education, I'm a former teacher. It's part of the reason why I'm such a teacher and a grateful. We love teachers, and the Strategy Center really led by Channing in terms of this work. We are part of one of the coalition and network of organizations that led the defund of LAUSD and that established the Black Student Achievement Plan. And the Strategy Center is one of the anchor organizations for the steering committee. In addition to that, I mean, there's lots more to say, but the last thing that I'll add is we are part of the California Black Power Network. And that's a network of organizations up and down the state, as far north as Humboldt and as far south as right before you get to Mexico. And we're a network of over 50 organizations committed to building Black power in California. And so I'm really excited for this event because we're going to be able to hear from such an esteemed panel, not only reflections on the Cold War, but tying it into today, what are we willing to do about it? And what are we willing to do in community with each other? So I'm really excited to introduce Rachel. And to get started, we're actually going to recite a poem together. And it's a poem that Rachel introduces to her class for 9/11 each year. And Rachel, are you on mic? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a poem. Hello. It's a poem that I do every year around 9/11 with my Spanish classes. And it's the last thing Victor Jara ever wrote. He was the wonderful, famed folk singer of Chile that when the CIA-backed coup against Chile on September 11th, 1973 happened, he was put in the national soccer stadium with 5,000 other Chileans, and many of whom were tortured and killed. He was tortured and murdered. And the story goes that his hands were cut off and sent to his wife. So it's, you know, the Cold War was never cold. And so this is the, Acuna is going to read the English. This is what I do with my students. I read the Spanish, they read the English. They're just level 1. So, and it's called Somos 5,000. We are 5,000. Somos 5,000 aquí.
We are 5,000 of us here.
En esta pequeña parte de la ciudad.
In this small part of the city.
Somos 5,000.
We are 5,000.
¿Cuántos somos en total en las ciudades y en todo el país?
I wonder how many we all are in the cities and in the whole country.
Somos aquí 10,000 manos que siembran y hacen andar las fábricas.
We are here, 10,000 hands that plant and that make factories run.
Tanto que mal me sales.
How hard it is to sing.
Cuando tengo que cantar de espanto.
When I must sing of horror.
Espanto como el que vivo, como el que muero, espanto.
Horror which I am living, horror which I am dying.
De verme entre tantos.
To see myself among so many.
Y tantos momentos del infinito.
and so many moments of infinity,
en que el silencio, el grito, son las metas de este canto.
in which silence and screams are the end of my song.
Qué espanto causa el rostro del fascismo.
What horror the face of fascism causes.
Llevan a cabo sus planes con precisión artera,
They carry out their plans with bloody precision,
sin importarles nada.
without caring about anything.
La sangre para ellos son medallas.
Blood for them are medals.
La matanza es acto de heroísmo.
Massacres an act of heroism.
Victor Jara, presente. Kuna? We're going, okay, one more, oh. Okay, that's okay. Oh, there's one going. Excuse me, oh. Oh, yeah,
There is a question.
right.
Sorry, I got a little emotional with the poem.
I know.
I'm from New York and I remember, I was right there when it happened and there was a lot of processing in multiple directions. So I got very emotional with the
No,
poem.
thank you. And can I say before, and also know that we're gonna have a short question and introduction to the book and to the event. And then Jody Evans, co-founder of Code King, is going to share. She needs to get on an airplane and go save the world in other parts. So she's going to go first and leave. But I just want to say before we have this back and forth is, you mentioned, thank you, being in New York, and obviously we honor everyone who died on 9/11, also our 9/11 and everything we did to the world after and since. But I went to 9/11. Do you remember Alma, with my darling daughter Alma, who's also in the book? And we walked in once again, giving the US empire a chance. We're going to go into this memorial. We're going to give it another chance. We were reverent. We were ready for death. And we walked in to the memorial. And the first thing we saw was a picture of Henry Kissinger. What for? And the man responsible for the Chilean 9/11. It was almost as if they were laughing in our face. Big picture. So anyway, yeah, thank you.
And were you going to tell us about how the book came about?
Yeah, so just briefly, and then Jody will share. I have most of my experience with the Cold War is that it was not cold, and it's been through Latin America solidarity. I lived abroad in Peru, my junior year abroad in the late 80s. And so I traveled around South America, and I was there after the dirty wars. I was pretty much there at the end of those. So I got to learn about South America through that. Then Central America, I was in the Peace Corps in Honduras for 3 years, went around Central America and heard about all that, the nightmare against Central America, and lived it here with Ronald Reagan. So in about 2017, when many of us had been working for Bernie Sanders' campaign, and he, lost, couldn't even be the nominee, I was driving around in San Pedro, my hometown, and I had the Ralph Nader show on, KPFK, in the house, and by the way, we have Sylvester Rivers, if we can give him a shout out. And this program might be on the radio tomorrow. So in his show, Cut to the Chase, 8 a.m. And I heard Ralph Nader say, how do we combat the big lie? And I thought to myself, with the big truth. And I had been had the aura of the Cold War most of my adult life. And so literally the idea of the Cold War Truth Commission came to me. I had known of the truth commissions in Argentina. I had known of the truth commissions against the genocide in Guatemala, etc. And so later you're going to hear from Frank, also, who helped me put on the webinar that is most of the book. Thank you. And that's how the book came to be. Thank you. Thank you. Now you're released. So we are going to have for our first testifier, and we're calling it testifiers and giving testimony because this is a truth commission. We are putting the Cold War on trial. And when Jody was in the webinar that we did in 2021, she was wonderful in explaining to us the last 100 years of Chinese history to show that China is not our enemy, and they are actually an incredibly anti-war society and culture. So take it away. Jody's going to bring us up to date on China also. Yeah.
Thank you for all you do. It's amazing leadership that makes this happen, and that's you. So thank you. Because it's 9/11, and I know Chile, I want to also bring us back to 9/11 and all the costs and the truth. So we will never forget the millions of people displaced, injured, tortured, and killed in the United States wars after 9/11. We will never forget 4.5 million people killed by the United States wars after 9/11. We will never forget the systematic torture program that the United States instituted at Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, and around the world after 9/11. We will never forget the 38 million plus people displaced by US wars after 9/11. We will never forget the deadly racism and Islamophobia that the US government and media promoted after 9/11 to justify war. We will never forget the $22 trillion spent on killing innocent people abroad while everyday people in the US struggle to survive. We will never forget the lies and fear-mongering US officials used after 9/11 to justify war and expand surveillance, detention, and deportation programs. We will never forget who was responsible, who lied, who paid, who profited. I wanted to start that. So the truth, what really drove Rachel to do this is what's missing. And it's so hidden that we don't even realize it. Because what we are taught to use us. We are taught to be steeped in lies so that more lies and more violence can happen. So since I testified, there's a lot more that's come to fruition and to just my experience. I wanted to say 9/11 because that's what could be came out of, which was for frightening the American people with these color-coded alerts, orange, red, and yellow, and so we called could be. So there we are, the lies, right? There was nothing about those color-coded alerts. They were ridiculous, but they were used to frighten people. And that's happening every day. But, you know, the Cold War, some of the things I've learned since my testimony, I learned that the global war to end fascism started in 1931. When Japan invaded China. And what I learned is the United States of America funded that war. 95% of the steel was from the United States of America. All the oil that drove that was from the United States of America. The leadership of the United States and the UK met, and they said, let the communists and the fascists kill each other when we have the capitalists remaining. How many people know that? I'm not seeing a hand. Okay, that's another thing that we don't know, right? I'm going to read some numbers because I think they're important. And here's what's crazy. These numbers have never been published in the United States.
Oh my goodness.
So here we go. Who paid the price of the global war to end fascism? The total deaths were 82.5 million people. Okay? The socialist forces who saved humanity lost 61% of their of the losses during the war. 51 million people. The Axis powers, the fascist aggressors, lost 13% of the total loss, which was 11 million people. Eastern and Southern Europe, caught between fascism and liberation, lost 11% of the losses, 10 million people. The colonies, Asia and Africa, victims of both Japanese fascism and Allied extraction, were 10% of the loss at 9 million. Western imperialist allies, France, Netherlands, Belgium, colonial powers, lost 1.5% of the total loss, 1,200,000. Anglo-American, US, UK, who claimed the victory, lost 1% at 847,000 people. Wow, right? Talk about the lives we've been told. So I just want to go back to the Cold War. Is an extension of this, right? The war never ended, the global war and fascism, because it continued as a war on communism. And that's what we call the Cold War. But the thing we don't talk about is what happened when the Cold War ended. Right. The USSR held something in check at the same time. That it was a checkmate that nobody talked about. That checkmate was a governor on top of capitalism, on top of the war economy, the extractive, destructive, oppressive economy. That held a governor because when a socialist state exists, it exists in a way that makes capitalists behave. They kind of got to be good because there's something else that other people could learn, so they kind of have to behave. When that was over, besides the United States being responsible for a 10% drop in the life expectancy of people in Russia, what did we see? We have seen a full-on escalation of what I call the war economy capitalism, that is what we are watching today. So when we turn around and say, how did we get here? In the middle of frickin' hell, with nothing in its way, that is, and you heard my number, $22 trillion of your taxpayers' money was just on the war on terror. That's money that should have been spent on the people. That is not money that should have been spent killing innocent people. And they are all innocent people because this is wars of aggression. These are not wars, these are occupations and violence. And this is a level of inhumanity that finally Palestine is waking people up to. We don't think it just started in Palestine. This has been happening. We watched 5 million people die in the Middle East and few of us run the street. So it's about truth. And all the truths that were in this book, you should read. Because you're miseducated. We're all miseducated. And our responsibility is to each other. Our responsibility is to educate on everything. Not just on history, but on how do we stay alive in this, what I call tsunami of experiences that is about to hit us, because nothing was in the way. Because we've been lied to that we live in a democracy, because we've been lied to that there's a Democratic Party, freaking corporation, and so rich. You know, like what? So we've been a lot of lies. Unfortunately, really innocent people, please remember their innocence, have been fed a lot of lies. We have to be kind to people right now. If you the layer and layer and layer of lie, and those freaking Zionists just bought CBS,
and they're about to buy Warner. Yeah, and if you think Fox News was, this is way bad. This is like another level that we can't even think about because we learned that we don't know what's ahead because we can't even imagine. Thank God, that's not where our minds go. We can't imagine what's coming. And so not only do we teach each other history, but we teach each other how to be together. We create community that with this war economy that has been on steroids for far too long, there's nothing in its way. And I have to say, the Cold War at least created a governor of that was stopping the insanity because and it's since identified, I started to pay attention. I was like, wait a minute, it was just the 90s when it all started going really bad. And of course, there was nothing in the way. What's the end of history?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, no, people are still alive, people are still fighting. So I want to talk about why I started China is not our enemy. It was because I saw exactly what I saw at the beginning of the campaign, what took me to the White House. I saw the lies. I saw the propaganda. You can see it. It's like you can cut it. It's so thick you can just cut it. I'm like the same story told by the same three people. It's propaganda. A little bit like the death of Charlie Kirk. So we have to pay attention to where we're being given propaganda. And this propaganda for China was focused on progressives. The war plan was to get the progressive community by showing them the violation of human rights. And so getting progressives to be the driving force for the war on China. So what I say is we just at China's Not Already try to help you not be tools of war. I don't care what you think about China, actually. I just care that you aren't spreading lies and that you aren't being used by lies. Because the most important thing is that we don't go to war on China. That is something now, I said, his passion is to go to war on China. I mean, look, the Department of War, I don't care that they call it the Department of War, these are being defense was always a lie.
Yeah.
But this week at campaign, we're gonna send the Art of War by Sun to Texas.
Yeah.
To show him maybe he should study a little Chinese philosophy. Because in the Art of War, the warrior never goes to war. The Art of War is about diplomacy. The Art of War is about that we never, ever go to war. And if we watch the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the end of the war in fascism, if we listen to Xi's speech and we watch what was happening, it was a coming together for peace. And in his words, he said, we all rise together or we fall together. That is where we are in history. We all rise together or we fall together. There are nuclear weapons, not like what Hitler had, but things we can't imagine. And also, it's not just the nuclear weapon itself. It's that if it hits a major city, everything that would burn, that cloud would cover the atmosphere and we would be in a black winter, a climate change that we don't even talk about. That there nothing grows and it's a devastation to life. We all become Palestine, being starved to death and with no water. So these warnings are here for us. What do we do in the face of these warnings? We come together. We recognize that it's always been people power. And we be that people power. We teach those who are near us with kindness and generosity and patience. We stay visible, we stay active, we stay engaged, and we tell the truth. And we tell the truth about everything. It starts with us. We tell the truth in our communities. We talk about what's going on. We don't hide it. We don't run away from it. We have muscles of peace to build. They've got a little flat over the few decades. And together, if we can build these muscles for peace, we can not take back the world, but build another world that replaces it. I think a lot we've been convinced we can fix what's broken. No, it's broken. What we want to do is create a new world together with the habits of peace and let this world that these people that want to stay and work on me, let it fall to its end because hate and violence end because they do not create anything. Hate and violence end. Let's create love, let's create community, and let's make sure we stay in telling the truth and in being collective and being engaged. Thank you.
As you, as you, as you get ready to go, and thank you so much. One of the last things you said is it will end. And one of the phrases I like to use, and it's in the beginning of the book, is people always say this can't last. This is so horrible, it can't last. By its very definition, it's unsustainable, meaning it can't last. So keep it coming. Yes, it's unsustainable. Yes, it's unsustainable. It absolutely cannot last. One of the other projects that Jody has founded and works very hard on is War is Not Green. And that's something we, yes, that's something we in our family, my daughter Alma, my partner John, we practice in our home. We have a place called Harbor Farms. And when we first bought it, my whole idea was to have property with a purpose. And you literally turn the land, you know, they say land back. Well, land back to the land. Decay LA is one of my hashtags. We need to, you know, re-green literally these cities. So, and there's so much beautiful work to do.
That's local peace economy.
That's local. Sorry, local peace economy.
War is Not Green is very
Yes.
important.
No, you're right.
War is Not Green is our campaign to shine a light on the elephant in the room, talk about the truth. I just want to like another truth. So the lie, it cost the United States was able to bury the truth about the cost of war to the planet. The cost of war to the planet is the #1 industrial polluter on the planet. That they were able to bury it. And when I was at COP marching with 100,000 people on my sticker, War is Not Green, and I would go to everybody, here's my sticker, War is Not Green. Did you know that the UN, the war is the #1 contributor? No one knew. 100,000 people marching for the planet didn't know what the #1 contributor was. It was hidden. So our campaign is to, and you've already done a major action on this with the Sierra Club. So our campaign is to get the environmental movement, which is funded with trillions of dollars a year, and 200 million activists joining in with the anti-war, anti-imperialist movement. Because if they want to save the planet, they need to be where they can, where the leverage is the biggest. And so we're going after the Sierra Club who hasn't answered our calls about doing up over 100 organizations from the climate movement, and Sierra Club hasn't joined yet. So we're going to the locals and teaching them about the cost for the planet. They're very receptive.
They are. It's and when we did our action in San Pedro, it's almost as if they were waiting for us to come and knowing that with us they get more power, and so more power together with us. You know, this is also the Cold War Truth Commission. I have another one in Ojai on Sunday. Michael, who's going to speak next and testify next, is going to be at that one after right. But this is an activist project and an action project. One of the things you can do to help stop the Cold War against China is come down to the port of Los Angeles. Every 2 Thursdays, there's the Harbor Commission, and it's 5 people appointed by the mayor, and they basically run the largest port in America, which is Port of Los Angeles, and also with Long Beach. and they have a meeting, they have public comment. And if you think about it, this region, Los Angeles, and also specifically all of us at the port, really make our money off of the peaceful flow and traffic of trade. And so if that is disrupted by war, all of our region, especially in the harbor region, is really going to suffer economically. And so we bring this to the case, and we're asking for resolutions from them. We're pressuring the unions, which back in the day before the crushing of them by the Cold War used to be really strong. But we're asking the unions to join with us and not right now benefit economically with trade with China, but ignore what the Pentagon's doing. That's wrong. Thank you. Okay,
So I don't have to disrupt.
are you gonna? Okay, well, thank you. Another round of applause. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. And this was,
That's fine.
so we threw Jody in there because she had to leave, but also she was talking about 1.2 billion people, so pretty important. Thank you. I need to get this a little. It's not. Thank you. And so, but now I'd like to backtrack a little bit, and besides, me come up with the idea, Frank, Dora, and we have a big round of applause. It's really important in the anti-war community in Los Angeles for decades now, just tireless. He came to our first Cold War Truth Commission in 2017. And also when I had the crazy idea during COVID, I said, Frank, we have to do this again. We have to do this again. It's coming. It's coming. They're calling us communists still, and they're gonna tear to shreds any remnants of the social security state. We've got to get out in front of this. He said, tell me what to do. I said, just ask anyone you know. And he knows everybody. So within days, we had in there, all in the book, within days, we had the eldest son of the Rosenbergs willing to give testimony, Michael Maripol. We had Dan Ellsberg of the Pentagon Papers. He's in the book, give testimony. And the list goes on and on and on. So I asked Frank to read, however, from his dear friend and all of our dear comrade, Blaise Fontaine was not able to be at the first Truth Commission, but he sent us these words to read. And Frank, and introduce yourself and yeah.
Before there's of course, most of you probably knew Blaise Fontaine, his wife Teresa. They had the Office of Americas, which I always said was the most important anti-war peace justice movement here in this area and all over the country. Blaise died in 2019. He had a show on KPFA for like 40 years or something like that. And he couldn't make that first Cold War Truth Commission Rachel put on, but he sent this in and I'm going to read it. This is from Blaise Fontaine. The Cold War was an attempt to continue the military-industrial windfall profits of World War II. The Cold War was followed by a long era of profit-got useful production. Millions of innocent civilians were murdered simply for being called communists. The word communist can be simply translated as okay to kill. In the past 28 years, the word communist has been replaced by the word terrorist. As our nation conducts a war of terror, primarily against civilians, the commercial media silenced the United States during our current devastation of Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Pakistan, together with the immediate threat of biocide by nuclear weapons, is outdoing the demonic Holocaust of the Third Reich. Silence is complicity. Blaise Fontaine. Now, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Rachel for putting together the Cold War Truth Commission. Michael, of course, who until recently was the interim general manager at KPFK for almost 10 years. And
Be our boss.
in my humble opinion, go back, how did I get involved in the animal input? When I discovered KPFK around 1980, I had a job as a driver for USC. I drove 8 hours a day, about 200 miles, and I was changing the channel around. I discovered on Mondays at 2 o'clock, Alan Watts. Some of you know the late Alan Watts. So every Monday I put him on and listened to him. And then one Monday I left it on KPFK, and I heard Noam Chomsky talking about supporting death squads. El Salvador. That was the beginning for me. Then was listening all day long, every day. I had that job for 20 years at KPFK, and I learned all about this. Wow, the more I learned, we're everywhere in the United States. And now, all these years later, I've come to realize wherever our country goes, we're doing the wrong thing. Yes, a lot of people may have a full life here, but what we do to people around the world is mass murder. As Jody was saying, numbers are huge, and people are just keep repeating. You're lied to about it here. The propaganda is state of the art. I found that for all these years of doing this work, a lot of people don't want to really look at it. It's kind of too hard for them. But you're all here tonight doing this. I published the book Addicted to War. There's a few copies up here. I put it out since 2002. The author, Joel Andreas, is updating it. There's going to be a new 2025 edition, probably around January, to be available. And since 2002, I've put out almost 250,000 of these books. So anybody who doesn't have a copy, you can get it from Channing here. It's a great book. Along with another great book is the book we're talking about tonight, the Cold War Truth Commission, that Rachel put together from our event. And I co-hosted with Rachel that day. We went on for over 9 hours. We had 54 speakers, and a lot of them were here tonight. My daughter Emily ran the webinar, and Alma was in it, and so many. Mike was in it, Jody was in it, and so many others. It really has some of the most important truth tellers in this country on this issue, and it's all in the book to read. And I've read it already now. It's really a good ritual. So thanks for including all that. And well, I guess that's about it for me. If you want to watch the Cold War Truth Commission, let's take this in. It's the whole 9 hours are on my website. So what you do is you go to Addicted to War, name of the book, .org.com, and then at the top you'll see there'll be a thing that says resource.
It's even easier. You go to addictedtowar.org/webinars.
Okay, yeah.
And it's there.
It's top the first webinar, yeah, on there. And it's all there. Every speaker's there, starting out Rachel and myself, and so many others. And listen to the incredible of the speakers we had there, telling so much truth. And you can see it there, at my website. And buy the book and get involved wherever you can. We need all of you to be involved and to try to show the rest of the people in this country what they don't want to see or can't see. And our country is addicted to war, and the Cold War is never cold. Thank you, everybody.
All right. I'm going to say a couple things on dovetailing on that, because that is part of the premise of this book, that the Cold War was never cold and it has never ended. And I'm going to bring a couple people up to date. I mean, who, besides Palestine, who are we bombing? Just a few days ago, what country? Off their shores. Well, okay. A little before Qatar.
Yemen.
The week before, in the ocean.
Yemen.
Venezuela. So, Frank brought up Noam Chomsky and hearing about El Salvador. So what's the connection between El Salvador and Venezuela? The first refugees that were deported by Trump were those 150 or so young Venezuelan men who are refugees from our sanctions and our coup attempts. By the way, there's a wonderful movie. I just showed it to my students also. A great class. It's called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. And it is a live feed of the coup against Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. It's on YouTube. It's a must watch. But, they were here because of the trauma we're causing their country. And then we deport them to El Salvador, to a prison in a country that we created trauma from in the first place. And we're still paying for that prison system down there. And a lot of people, raise your hand if you know or have ever heard, because the right wing, certainly, this is their talking point of MS-13, the gang. Okay. Well, MS-13 is a Cold War creation. It is our creation. When the Sandinistas came to power in Nicaragua in 1979, and then Reagan came to power here, he had to get rid of the Sandinistas, all, so that they couldn't be here in 4 days to get us. That was one of the Cold War lies. We're going to invade our country, little Nicaragua, in 4 days. Who remembers that? Ridiculous. And so he started the Contras, but to fight against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. But there weren't enough Nicaraguans against the revolution to fight. You understand? So he had to go to El Salvador for mercenaries, as we know, mercenaries all over Ukraine right now, too. Mercenaries to fight, train them in CIA torture tactics, train them in murder and mercenary things. They went to Nicaragua, their sister country, and fought against the people there. And they were given not only that training, but they were given a green card. And they came to the United States, and most came to Los Angeles at the time. And so all of that mix, plus the trauma of people fleeing the war in El Salvador, brought, we have a beautiful Salvadoran community in Los Angeles and in the United States, but we have to know the roots of a lot of the refugees. And just one last thing on the roots of those refugees. Recently, there's a great young Asian collective in Orange County, and they are mostly a lot of young Vietnamese, and they are, waking up to, a lot of, political realities. And one of the signs they said they have was, "We are here because you were there." So that's a very powerful line that we can use to those right wingers who are so anti-immigrant. First of all, we love all people, like Jody said, and all people are innocent. But people are here from our creation of refugees. So on the sign right there, and if you go touch it, don't spit on it, but that was at the Trump golf course, actually. That was the first sign when Trump in 2016 was running. We said U.S. wars lead to U.S. refugees, and people deserve reparations, not deportations. That's another thing. Reparations, not deportations from here. Thank you. Okay, yeah. And so because it is 10:30 on, and you're going to be our, not a heavy hitter, pinch hitter, the roundup. We're going to have Eric Mann, the creator of this gorgeous space, go. He's just such, yay, Eric, you can help us again. Eric has been such a supporter of this project, of this book, and thank you so much for working so hard to be with us here today. Can't wait to hear your testimony, Eric.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Michael. Hey, Rachel. Hi, team. So the first thing, Rachel, I want to say is that you've written a truly impressive book, a book that I think is going to be historic. And I think the reconstruction of this particular historical moment is going to be critical to movement building, especially in Black and Latinx communities, and also with just all the people that weren't there and have no historical perspective. So I want to focus on 3 points. First is, what is the country we live under? And in my view, we live under the US imperialist white settler state. And therefore, fascism is the permanent government structure. It's not a stage. Donald Trump is not the fascist. Well, Trump is the fascist. Joe Biden is the fascist. But I'm going to try to make it theoretical, not just name calling. The second is I'm going to talk a little bit about what is the Cold War, what's its history, And third, I have some specific proposals that might make things better, at least give a little bit of hope. So Rachel, again, I've read this book cover to cover, and Michael, your discussion of racism and the Cold War was great. So the first thing to understand is that at the 1965 March on Washington, Paul Potter of SDS said to us, what is this system that creates so much suffering? What's this system that can kill people in Vietnam and kill people in Mississippi? We have to name the system, because until we name the system, we can't change the system. Now, I've done a lot of work to say that the name of this system we live under is the US imperialist, genocidal, white settler state. What that means is that from the Europeans in 1492, this was not their land. They came, the only thing they brought was syphilis and smallpox, and they wiped out 90 million indigenous people in 100 years. Now, on those, certain nation states were built, the 13 colonies, the United States annexed the Southwest, and then immediately turned it into a slave state. So if in fact a government is based on genocide, steals the lands of others, is it by its very nature fascist? And I believe it is. But more importantly, it's imperialist. And more fundamental, we have a fundamental question, which is at all these land recognition events, the question is, if we acknowledge, if the land acknowledgement, why aren't we working to give the land back to the indigenous people from whom we as a nation stole it? So if you really say the US imperialist white genocidal settler state, if you keep saying it, then don't say about how there's democratic rights here, because it can't be democratic rights on top of the bones of 15 million Africans. So that's really an important point, because we're going to get to the second point. And I just want to say a little bit more about that. That, for instance, Donald Trump right now is kidnapping Mexicans. He's established the whole concept of kidnapping, ICE coming in and just picking up people off the street. But Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton passed the crime bill that gave 1 million more police, 10 billion for prisoners. They then also passed the Effective Death Penalty Act, meaning we're not effectively killing people well enough on death row. And they got rid of aid to families with dependent children and replaced it with temporary assistance to needy families. Is this not fascism? Is the kidnapping of Black children not fascism?
Yes.
There are 800,000 Black children and adults in prison today. So my point is, if fascism is a government that carries out genocide at home and abroad, let's stop talking about the great democratic institutions of the United States. The reason why this is important, Rachel, everybody, is because there's a group of people on the left now who are saying we have to build a united front against MAGA, a united front against Trump. But we have to build a united front against imperialism, in which we take on the Democrats and Trump. But a lot of people are saying united front against MAGA are leftists hiding in the Democratic Party. So it's very important to understand that, are we challenging both parties or just the Republican Party? The second thing I just want to talk a little bit about is the Cold War. I think we know the history, a lot of it is in this great book, but in 1933, Hitler came to power as the chancellor. The communist parties realized they had made some mistakes in the United Front. Maxim Litvinov was the foreign secretary of the Soviet Union. He went on a international tour to get England, France, uh, United States in an international united front against fascism. He was told, we don't want to be in an international united front against fascism. We want to be in an international front against communism. So he couldn't do it. So in 1938, Neville Chamberlain signed the Munich agreements with Germany, saying, we agree not to attack you, and we're going to give you Czechoslovakia, and we're going to give you even part of France. And he said he bought peace in his time. A year later, Stalin signed an agreement with, I believe, it was Ribbentrop, and they called it the Stalin-German Pact. And he was accused of that, but he did it 1 year after the Europeans already made their own pact. So what happened was that during World War II, the real United States was never against fascism. It was in a tactical relationship to fascism. It was a war against fascism, but it wanted Germany to attack Soviet Union, which it did. And by doing so, it weakened the Soviet Union to the point where 26 million Russians were killed. Now, after World War II, the Russians thought, well, we all defeated fascism, then at least there'll be some peace in the world. But what you don't know is, and it was in one of the great articles in the book, Rachel, the Catholic Church dressed up 2,000 Nazis in clerical garb and sent them to Latin America as priests. There were special programs developed by the United States to rehabilitate Nazis and bring them into the State Department, in the military department. Then they called it the Democratic, West Germany. My mother said, as a Jew, well, then where did all the fascists go? The reason is the United States rehabilitated the fascists in West Germany and Japan to turn against the Soviet Union. Now imagine the people in the United States, Paul Robeson, W.E. Du Bois, all the communists thought that they were in a war against fascism, thought that they were going to war against Hitler, and that they were going to be rewarded in some way after World War II. Imagine the shock after Hiroshima and Nagasaki to be told, no, the war is against you, and the most horrible statements about communists took place. What we don't know, though, is that how many Black communists stood up against it. In 1951, William L. Patterson passed a document called We Charge Genocide in the middle of the Cold War. He brought it to the United Nations. We bring these charges against the United Nations. Eleanor Roosevelt opposed it, but the point is the Black communists did not turn over. Were not simply victims. They came out of prison and they fought. You also don't know that in 1955, in the middle of the Cold War, was the Montgomery bus boycott. What you don't know is the Montgomery bus boycott was initiated by Rosa Parks, who had been trained by the communists. They had all been at the Highlander Center in Tennessee that was run by the communists. That's to say the communists did not give up. And it's wrong to keep talking about they did this to us during the Cold War, they did this to us during the Cold War. It was the communists who still fought the best inside the United States, in particular the Black communists. So we should be proud of that and talk about the resistance to the Cold War, not just the crimes of the Cold War. And that's part of the truth. So then finally, I want to talk about optimism. Palestine, Palestine, Palestine. Blacks, blacks, blacks. China, China, China. The Cold War Truth Commission and Strategy and Soul books. Palestine is a genocide that never stops. I think none of us know what to do, but I think the most important thing to do is this must be the central moral question of our time. As children are dying in Palestine every single day, we know that. We also know that, by the way, Palestine, back to my point about a united front against imperialism, is, as Marcy Winogrand said, if genocide is not your red line, speaking to the Democrats, then you have no moral principles. To vote for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris on the grounds that she called for a ceasefire. Do you know Kamala Harris would not allow one Palestinian to come to the stage, not a Palestinian doctor, woman, nurse, dancer, singer, because if you brought one Palestinian person on the stage of the Democratic National Convention, people would say, oh my God, Palestinians are people. She's a person. And we're killing that person. So they needed to not allow the humanity of Palestinians to be on the stage. I don't know what to do. I simply know all of us must do everything we can. In our bookstore, we're doing a lot of work on more and more poetry and more books from Palestinian resistance. Second thing about Black people, it's very painful to me that people talk about the genocide against Palestinians, which I completely fought for, but there's not enough discussion of genocide against Black people, even in the very room we're sitting in. In 1970, when Tom Bradley was almost mayor, the population of LA was 3 million people, of which 750,000 were Black. Here we are in 2025, the population is 44 million, of which 350,000 are Black. That means Black people were once 25% of the city, they're now less than 10%. Now, under the genocide statutes, the forcible movement of a people out of their homeland is a form of genocide. But nobody cares. I mean, where did those 400,000 people go? They didn't go to Pacific Palisades, folks. They went to the couches and they went to the Inland Empire. They went to, the desert areas, but they're unemployed and they're on the streets of Los Angeles today. 60,000 people on the streets of Los Angeles. But that's the Democratic Party's genocide. And very frankly, if Trump put 2,000 Black people on the streets, there would be outroar. But if the Democratic Party put 60,000 homeless people on the streets,
Yeah. No
there
one
would,
says,
what was that?
I said, no one says a word when the Dems do it.
No one says a word when the Dems do it. So it's not rhetorical that I believe Code Pink and the Strategy Center are carrying out an anti-war united front against imperialism in all its forms. And I want to particularly thank Medea Benjamin, who is just a fierce warrior. I mean, she will not quit. She is the model of who I want to be when I grow up. She's really like so fierce, willing to go to Congress, willing to go to work with families that have hit drones. And I think her courage is a model for all of us. Then I move to China. The People's Republic of China is our greatest hope. There is no hope inside the United States without an international united front against imperialism. It is what China is doing is amazing, and people don't realize it. First of all, they've moved 450 million people out of poverty. China is a communist country practicing inside of a world capitalist system, but they're building their own alternative economic system. It's called the Belt and Road Project, and they're giving money to African countries to rebuild themselves. Not loans like the International Monetary Fund, but gifts or very, very low interest loans. China is in a group called BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. China is at the G77 and China at the United Nations. China just had a military exercise to tell the United States, you better not F with us. We're not going to be invaded by you. So what I'm getting to is there's hope with the People's Republic of China. And even on the issue of trade, the Chinese chips are going to get better than the United States. The idea that they're stealing the technology is no, the Chinese are a more advanced society. But here's an interesting thing. I think that Donald Trump is the peace candidate. I support the initiatives of Donald Trump and oppose the initiatives of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Uh, Joe Biden said that Xi, the president of China, does not have a democratic bone in his body. Now, you cannot be trying to negotiate with a head of state by making such a state. Now, Joe Biden has no bones in his body and no brains in his skull, but that's a different story. You don't do that unless you want to go to war with them. Now, Trump says, I get along with Xi. I get along with Putin. I just want a trade war. Now, there's a difference between a trade war and the military invasion of China by the United States trying to foment Taiwan and the Philippines to surround China. That's Biden. That's you get it. So finally, where's the hope? Code Pink, Cold War Truth Commission, and I want to just quickly talk about the Strategy and Soul Movement Center. You know, they're taking away PBS, they're taking away this, they're taking away affirmative action. I was there when there was none. And we built the SNCC Freedom Singers. We built our own political theater and our own guerrilla theaters. We built the Freedom Schools. We built our counter institutions. Rachel published a book on her own. We have to look at the Strategy Center, Movement Center as an alternate center of resistance and look for new centers of resistance. If there's anybody who wants to help us build it, you can write me at eric@voicesfromthefrontlines.com. And Rachel, to end, your book is really historic. I've read it cover to cover. All the writers are wonderful. And you are an alternate institution. You made something happen.
Thank you, and can't wait till you come back. I'll come back to the center, give you a big hug. We'll plan some more. Yeah, thank you so much, so much. We're gonna have, and Michael needs to, have his mic on. Eric mentioned two people who are in the book. One, Medea's talk, is amazing. Please get the book, and it's getting near Christmas time. Think of, gifts for other people, also. But Medea got her start in Africa. And so her whole talk is on the Cold War's crushing of the liberation struggles after World War II in Africa. It's a beautiful, beautiful testimony that she gave. And also, Harold Francis Mikins talked about, he's talking about the genocide against Africans here in the United States. She tells us and teaches us that the Cold War didn't start at the end of World War II. It didn't even start with the Russian Revolution. It started in the 1850s in the United States. Soon after the publishing of the Communist Manifesto, the abolitionists, i.e. the people trying to abolish slavery, were red-baited and labeled as communists. And they said it's not just that they want to do away with slavery, they're communists and they're socialists. So this lie and this red baiting has gone back for 150 years. And with that, I want to turn it over to Michael Novick, who, like I said, was both Truth Commissions. And thank you very much. He's joining us here. He's also going to be with us in Ojai this Sunday. So Michael Novick.
Yeah, some tough acts to follow, but I guess I'm the cleanup dinner. So I'll talk about a few points that I made in the book and a couple of others. One is actually not in the book. It was from the 2017, the first Truth Commission when I was there in Hampton. I talked about the impact of the Cold War on the trade union movement in the United States. My parents were in, and I myself briefly was in a union in New York called District 65, which was a communist-led union. They actually left when the CIO merged with the American Federation of Labor. They left because they felt it was a sellout. And that's right. Eventually, they were forced back. They became part of the United Auto Workers and were the seedbed for both the National Writers Union and what is now one of the dominant forces in the UAW, which is the academic workers. That was launched by my parents' union. But they suffered greatly in that period because they were under attack, and the union movement was. I'm a member of United Teachers Los Angeles now, so-called the chapter chair of UTLA. And UTLA is the second teachers union in Los Angeles because the first one was destroyed during the Cold War because they refused to sign the loyalty oath. So, this was a challenge that I think was not fully met. And labor is still suffering to this day because of the anti-communism of that period. My life is more or less contiguous with the Cold War because I was born in 47. And that's more or less the period in which the Cold War was launched. And this is not a criticism of the book, but I want to point out that people talk about the fact that the ruling ideas are the ideas of the ruling class. And what we call the Cold War in that period, the socialist camp, the Soviet Union, referred to as a period of peaceful coexistence. And the difference between the two conceptions spells out the two different systems. The U.S. referred to as the Cold War because we're addicted to war, as Frank's book, Joel Andreas' book very clearly shows. And you'll see in the book, The Cold War, Truth mentioned, the thing was mentioned about, the anti-communism of attacks on the abolitionists going back to the 1840s, 1850s. So in a certain way, the Cold War was a mask for continued U.S. imperialism. In my section, I talk about the fact that the U.S. invaded Cuba before the Soviet Union existed. The U.S. invaded Nicaragua before the Sandinistas. They invaded Nicaragua from Sandino in the 1920s. And all of that is before the so-called Cold War. But the Cold War provided a good pretext and a good frame and a good lie in which to cover all these interventions and wars that were carried out in Central America, Korea, and Vietnam, and hundreds of others. The other point I make that's in the book is that the so-called Red Scare was very much actually a Black Scare. And the empire was quite aware of the fact that, very similar to the end of World War I, when many Black GIs came back to the United States and began to struggle for democracy and their rights inside the country, they anticipated that would happen again at the end of World War II. And in advance to that, they began, this attack on communists, and particularly Black communists, as Eric pointed out. And so, again, to go back to my parents' union, there was an effort to support Paul Robeson. Robeson, along with William Patterson, brought that We Charge Genocide petition to the United Nations. And there were two concerts held in Poughkeepsie, New York, because the Robeson passport was taken. They refused to allow him to travel internationally, even though he was one of the most noted singers and performers in the world. And so my parents' union went up there. There was a riot. I don't know if you call it a pogrom or a strike, but hundreds of white upstate New York residents attacked in an anti-communist, anti-Black, and anti-Semitic fashion the people who came to the concert in Europe. And so that was what the Cold War manifested. It manifested white supremacy. It manifested, resistance to the labor movement and to many, many other struggles. And I then want to talk about one other fact which is not in the book or was in my original testimony. I was reading a book about the history of outer space. You wouldn't think that's odd, but it's a really fascinating book, and they talk about, and I lived through this, and maybe some of you did, because I see some of you are about my age here in the audience. I don't know if people remember Mars and Beyond or Willie Lee and Werner von Braun. But Disney made them public figures. They became cultural heroes in the United States. Werner and Willie Lee were part of the Nazi uh, rocket scientists who invented the V2. The V2, the V does not stand for victory. Some people thought it was victory, but no, it's the German word for vengeance. And uh, uh, Werner von Braun has a very clear plan for creating space stations and eventually conquering Mars. And when the war ended, that entire apparatus was absorbed by the United States government, lock, stock, and barrel, into NASA, into the U.S. Army, into the Redstone missile program to invent ICBM and terrorize the planet. Simultaneously, they brought in most of the counterinsurgency and counterintelligence operatives of the Gehlen underground clandestine operations of the Nazis in Eastern Europe. They were attacking all the resistance forces in France as well, but primarily in Poland and some of the other Yugoslavia. And that entire apparatus was absorbed into the CIA through Operation Paperclip. They brought those Nazi scientists here. They brought those talked about the fact they shipped thousands of Nazis to Latin America. And so the Cold War represented that reincorporation of fascism back into the political economy. And so we're seeing it there. There was a headline in the papers the other day on the LA Times. Aerospace industry boosted again. Well, what's that about? That's because Trump has created the Space Force. That's because Musk, Elon Musk. So I don't know if you know the name Elon, where he got the name Elon, but it comes from a book written by a Nazi about space. And his father, who's from South Africa, took the name Elon from that book and put it on his son. So we need to understand what we're dealing with. And but I don't want to leave people on a downer, because I think that all these fascist manifestations represent the fear that that system has, wherever it's rooted and based, of the capacity and the creative powers of the people and of the resistance and of the struggle of decolonization. That period at the end of World War II was a tremendous period of decolonization. Africa was rising up, Asia was rising up, and the imperialists imposed things like Israel through partition. They divided Palestine, and they said, okay, we're going to plant something here that will help us control this revolutionary upsurge in the Middle East. They created a partition in India. India used to be one single subcontinent. They created Pakistan, and they divided the country into, and then Pakistan split into Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. So that's always their policy: is divide and conquer. And so what is our approach? Our approach is unite and liberate. And that's what they're afraid of. They have, this is a tremendous fear. The last thing I want to talk about briefly is Pacifica, because Pacifica also is in that exact same period. Pacifica was founded in 1948 by anti-war pacifists. At the start of the Cold War, they were willing to put communists on the radio. But Pacifica has always been contested terrain, because Cold War liberals want to dominate Pacifica. And you're seeing that over and over again. It's a constant struggle, but it does represent the kernel of something potential. It represents, self-determination. It represents the possibility of non-corporate, because actually the physics of broadcasting is that it's a commons. It's a commons that requires community regulation and cooperation. And the only way that this system can handle that is by parceling it out and creating corporate entities like Corporation for Public Broadcasting to try to control it. But Pacifica said, we're going to be listener sponsored. We're going to allow the listeners to have a voice in what goes on the air. We're going to encourage creativity. But it's always been contested. It's contested this day. So I was briefly the interim general manager of KPFK from September of
Oh, wait. Wait,
November 2024. And what I tried to do is bring onto the air. For example, we kept voices from the front lines back on as long as they could manage it. We put, the Think Outside the Cage show back on. We put Sylvester back on. We put the Disability Rights show back on. We added the show, a labor show for the first time in almost a decade. We added building bridges and a lot of programs from around the network. Capitalism, Race, and Democracy. Some of those shows are still on, but many of them were removed as soon as I got rid of me. I put on Ian Masters, who is, but understand who he is, he's a Cold War liberal. He's exactly that. He thinks, one of the first shows he put on was he had a better idea about how to get rid of Maduro than Trump did. You know what I mean? That's his approach. He brings on these people who think they know how to run the empire better than the people currently running it. And so that's what I'm saying is that everything is contested, and it's constant struggle, and it needs to be, and we need to build up our forces, our capacity to have self-determined voices. I do work on 2 newspapers. They say, freedom of the press is under attack. They say that the press only, you have freedom of the press of those who own, but Changeling's been coming out for many years. During the Tide, since 1988. And, we sent it free to hundreds and hundreds of prisons around the country and to many, many other people who give it out for free in events. It's a free will donation. So they're non-commodity products. That's intentional. We're not peddling the paper. It's meant to say that, and it's open. If you have events that you want to list, just send us an email, changelinks@gmail.com. And, we print a lot of stuff from the prisoners themselves in the other one. And, these are people who are dealing with fascism on an everyday basis. That's the last thing I'll say. I taught school in the Unified for many, many years. I was a shop steward, really, they call it. But they call it, in UT, they call it chapter chair. It's a shop steward for the teachers union. And I can tell you that schools are also contested terrain. The administration that runs those schools, the people that run most businesses, apply a fascist model. It's a fascist labor model. It's a fascist educational model right now. The prisons, George Jackson said half a lifetime ago, more than half, fascists are right here. They operate and they divide and conquer. One of the things they use to divide people is called privilege. And I can tell you as a teacher that you use privileges as a way to get students to do what you want. As a parent, you give your kids privilege to get them to do what you want. Privilege is not, something you feel guilty about. Privilege is a mechanism of social control. And the main privilege in this society is white skin privilege, as they call it. And that's designed to keep people complicit, complacent, and compliant. And the only way to deal with that is to stop being complicit, complacent, and compliant. And then the privilege will disappear, frankly, because if you cross the line, they'll come after you. And people have to be prepared for that and deal with that, because that's the only basis on which we'll be able to change it. So, I would emphasize, in the name of Cold War Truth Commission, the Truth Commission. Speak the truth, and the truth will set you free. Thank you.
We're going to transition a bit into opening the mic for public testimony. For public testimony, if you would like to say your experience on the Cold War, whether it's your personal experience. We have had a lot of testimonies. People say, my father was in the labor movement in the 40s and he lost his job, whatever people's personal stories. In our first live truth commission, we have torture survivors from Guatemala, from the genocide. We had victims of the diaspora from the war in El Salvador. So also if it's your personal testimony, but I want to say a couple of things about Michael's talk. I'm not going to name names, but I had a very prominent KPFK person is say, and he said it on the air, that Pacifica was founded in the shadow of World War II. And I thought, that's going backwards. Pacifica was founded in the dawn of the Cold War. The people who founded Pacifica knew what was coming. And so to always say, oh, they were, it was a result of World War II. No, it was a premonition. They knew exactly where this country was going. And that's why Pacifica has been so vital for the last 60 something years. Also, talking about hope, super big hope. Earth, that's last. If we align with her, if we work with her, if we literally depave the land and grow food and plant trees and build soil and build the butterflies and everything we do, not only will you be happier every single day, but you're doing the work that has to be done because it brings people together. The Trojan horse, definitely, and the point in this book is that the Cold War is a Trojan horse for fascism. And World War II never really ended. It just morphed into World War III, which was the Cold War. And it's, again, has never ended. If you want to hear more about outer space, thanks for bringing us, Bruce Gagnon, expert in these issues, talks about it, and the weaponization of outer space right now with weapons in orbit. It's pretty crazy. The last thing I want to say and then open it up is I'm also here because of my dad. My dad was in World War II. He was a Nazi hunter. He was stationed in Berchtesgadens, which was Hitler's mountain lair. If you ever see pictures of Hitler in kind of the countryside, that was his mountain getaway. And so my dad's job was after World War II to find out if you were a Nazi or not. So he would have to kind of trick people or interview you to see if you were a refugee or a Nazi. And afterwards, when he came back to the United States and then the dawn of the Cold War, he was baffled too, just like I thought we were fighting fascism. And then he saw this, but as a lifelong atheist, he always taught me, he says, Rachel, never forget. The word was not communism in the 1950s. The word was godless communism. It was one word. And they put it together and they put the fear of the devil in you. And so the equation of the devil with communism is huge. So again, we're trying to help people answer for themselves and help you be a truth commissioner and a power, taker by helping others understand, how did we get here? They're so terrified. Let them know that we have been bringing in the religious right for the last, well, forever in this country, but under the guise of the Cold War for the last 7 years at least. And so all of these things come into play, and it's a helpful paradigm for all of us. So with that said, does anyone want to come up or ask a question or say their experience? And there's a mic, or if you're shy, you can raise your hand, anything. We would love to have you. You know, so many of us have seen you around for years as an activist, and you probably have so much to share. We really appreciate it.
And I want to say,
Would you like to come?
Brandy.
Oh,
It's just so nice to see you guys.
Yay.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to sit, stand, however?
okay, I'll stand. A lot of you here know me. I've been with the Bus Drivers Union Labor Community Strategy Center since '95, I think it was. And I learned so much from many of the people here. Some of them have come and gone. Some of them we lost, and I still miss Pecanza Ramsey. I give her kudos to Pecanza. I was born in about 2 months before World War II ended. I just turned 80, June. And that makes me that I lived my whole life and through the whole so-called Cold War period. And so I grew up with this sort of red thing going on, some of these wonderful cartoons here with the octopus and everything. That was the world I grew up with. And then in the 60s happened and people began to come out of the woodwork. The movements really took off. And there were even some satirical movies like, and when was the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. I don't know if any of you remember that with Zack Snyder, making fun of our fear of the Russian communists.
Right.
And then another one was the Mouse That Roared. And always admiring them. And which I think that has another message too. Little tiny countries like the Pacific Island nations are being ignored. Or the seas are rising because of climate change. We gotta care for these countries.
Yeah.
We're always talking about big powers. And so in some ways I'm a little critical here because I know Eric Mann for years, and I usually don't disagree with him on hardly anything. But on this one, I was a little surprised that he said that Trump was a peace activist or something along that line. And I thought, what? I've not seen any of our presidents were peace activists. They're all a bunch of, fascists, either softcore fascists or hardcore fascists, like Trump, and it's getting more dangerous and worse without evidence and things. So we really do need some good news. And the only good news will be coming from, I think, us, all the people in this room and people outside, the masses of people. We gotta have courage. And that's scary. To speak our minds. It's a very dangerous time to tell the truth. And for me, for everyone. So anyhow, I just want to say I lived through the Cold War, but I want to give voice. I hope my little speech will inspire someone else to now. Thank you.
Nancy.
Oh,
It's, my good friend, she said, anyway. I heard Eric Mann say that too, but I think yeah, he was being facetious. And what's happening is Trump branded himself as the peace.
Yeah.
Candidate. He's alive. And then let me see what's happening now. Notice every time there's a talks or ceasefire and somebody gets killed. Every time there's peace, somebody gets give me the guess. What can I say? The liars, the imperialists, but I like what Eric Mann said about how the brand being that's a thing.
And so speaking of
What they did to Sandino and what they did to Zapata, they brought them to peace talks, and then after they left, they killed them. But that's when they didn't end the peace talk. And yes, got better.
there's a picture in the back, speaking of Trump, of Roy Cohen, who's both the attorney for Joe McCarthy and the attorney for Donald Trump. There's a picture in the back of them. And please, after the event, please come and enjoy the literature in the back. And now it looks like my lovely daughter, who is in the book, is going to come up and perhaps read her testimony, tell her story.
Okay. So wait, is the mic? Okay. This was a long time ago. I was in 8th grade. So my mom has been talking about this book, and
That one.
my mom has been talking about this book and planning this book and planning the truth missions for a long time, and I've been cheering her on for a long time because I think it's really needed, and especially right now, I think this is the perfect time. So in the beginning of the U.S. Cold War,
The United States passed a law that added the words "under God" to the pledge on June 14, 1954. It was a way to counter the idea of godless communism, a phrase that was used throughout the 1950s to alienate progressives from the rest of society. Many countries have an oath of allegiance, but the United States was one of the few to make it part of the primary education requirement. It's like a loyalty oath for kids. I'm here to testify about what happened to me when I was in 8th grade in regards to the Pledge of Allegiance in schools and my First Amendment rights. So, for a few weeks after starting 8th grade, I stood for the pledge like all obedient American kids. And then I heard about Colin Kaepernick kneeling to end the killing of Black people. I'm biracial, and because his demonstration was important to me, it led to the idea of finally not standing for the pledge. When I started not standing, my teacher yelled at me and said, "You know what this looks like? It looks like you're not happy to be in this country." He said I wasn't grateful and that I was disloyal. I still didn't stand. My mom and I went to James Allen, the publisher of the Independent, San Pedro Harbor newspaper, Random Lengths News, and asked for help. What were my rights? He told us that it was my right to not stand, nor to say the pledge. In 1943, in West Virginia, State Board of Education versus Barnett, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that students cannot be compelled to recite the Pledge of Allegiance, nor can they be punished for not doing so. We went back to my principal and my teacher with a copy of the Supreme Court case, and she never bothered me again. Got him, girl. We got him.
Thanks. Yeah, that's awesome. Any,
Anybody else?
you know, as someone's thinking to come up, I want to say, here's my lovely daughter, you know, so proud of her, and being a teacher and dealing with the youth. And I think that's the biggest hope, you know, you know, young people just are bored. Oh, whoa. And I can teach them all, are they not? I mean, you can talk to them for 3 minutes about something and they get it. And it makes me think of the song by the Carpenters. Remember, such a beautiful song, "Bless the Beast and the Children." What a heartbreaker. And I want to just speak out for the beast right now. Speak out for the planet and the animals and the massacre against nature that has been all war and all imperialism. And you know, to say, for example, because here's where do we go from here? If the Cold Wars hadn't happened in Africa, let's say, what could have happened to Mozambique? What would have happened to the Congo? How could have Guinea-Bissau been different? All of these countries how Niger right now, and how could the African continent have not had the wars and difficulties and have been more, after World War II, been allowed to have the liberation struggles and not crushed by the Cold War? Right now in Africa, every 15 minutes, an elephant is slaughtered. It's not done, we all know, for ivory, for the money, for people. It's not subsistence in any way. It's to buy guns for the wars in Africa. So, you know, to speak up for animals is to speak against war also. And I just wanted to honor all over the world that's suffering. And so, you know, let's the beast and the children. I wanted to bring that up. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just mention one other thing that didn't come up about China, which is that China is committed to building an ecological civilization. It's not just policy of the government and society, and it expresses, you know, the same contradiction that Rachel was talking about between capitalism and the environment, and they understand that they have to follow a non-capitalist path to preserve the environment. And you know, they've made some errors in the past and they have, you know, some environmental problems, but as a society, they're committed to overcoming them through a different course of development. One of the things of which is that they emphasize still rural development. They've had a tremendous urbanization, but they have preserved agricultural communes and other methods of the countryside to overcome, you know, and you look at this country, you see that contradiction very, very clearly between rural and urban areas and, you know, so-called red states and blue states. And they're fighting against that kind of thing, but by providing opportunities for cultural, economic, and social development in the countryside. And to do it in a way that's consistent with feeding, you know, a billion people. And so I think that's something to really keep in mind.
Yeah, thank you. And that's kind of one of the big thoughts of my mind. One of my backgrounds is I'm an environmental resource engineer. And so I'm always thinking in terms of resources, natural resources, how we survive on this planet, what we do. And I really believe the Cold War has been a war against a type of development model. It has been the pushing of global capitalism and that model against anything that will get in its way, including saving the planet. Kind of the ultimate contradiction. And so one of my pieces I wrote one time, so I go to Cuba a lot of background there, is yay, viva Cuba, viva Fidel. Okay, is Cuba's alternative to war. I don't know what it is. Sustainable development. Yeah, that's the alternative. Sustainable development. And then to say one of the things, and this is how we need to think, we need to talk with people in the military and the police and the army in this country, because in the army in China, they're planting trees by the tens of millions. That's what they're doing. In the army in China, what the soldiers are doing is they're pollinating plants in order to feed 1.2 billion people. So how can we use the people in this land for the jobs that need to be done? How can we transition people, for example, out of healthcare insurance into actual healthcare? How can we transition people out of the military into the other jobs that are needed? It's just kind of it's tough to say your job's going to go away, cut this, cut that. We really need to transition. What are the skill sets? How do we move them into a different economy and a different future? Thank you. Yes, awesome. Paul, please.
To that thing about, you know, transition people from.
Oh, we need you on mic.
We need you on mic, KPFK. Yeah, I was just gonna say to that point about the transitioning from the military industrial complex, we really wouldn't even need to. We could pay these people more because we wouldn't have to pay for the overhead. All of that money is coming from us. So they could stay home.
I love that, you know, and so again, instead of, you know, coming at RAR, which we want to, imagine if we could come at it in a completely different way. People, for the most part, don't want to be doing those kinds of things to other people in the planet. Yeah. They'd rather be at home, you know, basically being with their wives, okay? Let's just get real.
Or husbands.
Our husbands, right.
Anyone remember Jobs for Justice?
You bet in the 1980s, the move for Jobs for Justice to transition because we were wrapping up the war economy under Ronald Reagan. So it was a big move for that. So that whole idea of transitioning to different jobs for an economy. Yes. Mike.
Here.
I'm not sure what to say. 100 things I can talk about. Yeah.
Like it's
Come up in front. You want to come up in front?
No.
You want to come up in front? No.
Well, one thing I thought of, either of you can comment, the late Senator John McCain, as well as the current TV watcher in the White House, and many other people on occasion have referred to Nancy Pelosi as a communist.
So what do you have to say to that?
I look like you think myself.
Yeah, I would say, if she was a communist, it'd be mainstream politics, it would be far more interesting.
Yeah.
You know,
So
just,
the Democratic Party is very clear that it's a capitalist party. Nancy Pelosi herself said that very specifically to even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's not a communist either, just a social democrat.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to. You know, a point about you touched on World War II. Well, I don't have a tele, I haven't known the television for 30 years. But I read a lot. So I knows I read a lot. I send him texts all the time. Stuff I read, but you know, important point. Maybe some of the younger people may know this. I don't know, maybe not. All the anti-Nazi movements in Europe, every place the Nazis occupied, from Norway to Yugoslavia to Romania, and, you know, and on into the Soviet Union. In France, the resistance movements against the Nazis, the resistance movement against Mussolini in Italy, were by and large led by communists.
Yep.
Tell people this, you know. This, you know, I read a book by a guy who's friends with Bill O'Reilly, and even in this is a book about the liberation of Paris, when the Normandy invasion, when the Allies went into Paris and drove the Nazis out. You know, this guy is, you know, a sort of right-wing author. He talks about how the Nazis, excuse me, communists were in charge in Paris. So anyway, there's just so many things that you know, when you talk about communism, and you know what you mentioned earlier about how many communists died during World War II. You know, if you tell, from what I've read, I've not been to Russia, but from what I've read, you know, if you tell a Russian who knows their history, you know, the United States won the World War II, they just look at you and, you know, with just there's you know, they look at you as if you're insane. You know, what is it, 20 million? With the figure I've read. No, don't, I guess nobody will ever know. 20 million or so citizens of the Soviet Union lost their lives with the Nazi invasion. The Nazis were headed for the oil fields in Baku in Azerbaijan. And if they would have got there, anyway.
We did.
This is something about that question.
Yeah.
See what they're doing, they're creating a narrative which is false, and people don't know. People don't know what communism is. They just throw something out. When I was growing up, it was ism. We have to stop communism because it's like the domino theory. And socialism. Don't forget CRT. Or now, so they just throw these words out, and they create a word that you don't even have a clue what it is. This guy said, well, I don't like, I'm not Burn because he's against CRT. You know what CRT is? He has no clue. So they're very good at this narrative.
Yeah.
I tell my Christian brethren that Jesus was a communist. What? That means, you know, some cases are, it means that she's socialism, that's my definition. So he was a communist, but you don't know what communism is. So that's all these words, especially they're good at that. They're branding a word, you have no clue what it is. Black. Growing up as a book, it was bad. The ugly black duckling turns into what? Away, so
Okay, well, not all anti-fascists are communists, but all communists are anti-fascists. And so we have been killing the allies who can help us deal with the fascists for all these years, and we wonder where we are, why we're here. We've been changing the political gene pool of humanity all around the world. And we did it to ourselves. Yeah, we didn't know, we would fight like hell against it, but the liberals What'd you call them? I love that word.
Go for it.
Cold war liberals. I hate Ian Masters.
Yeah,
The only good thing about Tom Hartman is he hates Ronald Reagan, but I like that. Okay,
That's about it.
well, yeah, right. Yes, Channing. And thank you so much to Channing and for. So gracious. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wasn't gonna speak today, and it was a great honor to not speak today, because I'm always speaking. But I thought I would bring this in there because I heard some things mentioned. I mean, one about students, and I think you were saying that schools are fascist, and working with students at office when they are fascist, and one of the things that I showed them is we put up this chart, and I just did a comparison chart with a correctional facility on one side and a school on one side. And when you think about every single element, school is just like that correctional facility. So one, I mean, obviously the obvious category is correctional facility says you have a bell that tells you when you can leave your cell, not school. You have a bell that tells you when you can leave your school or not, right? You, on the correctional facility side, you have to ask permission when you want to use the phone to call out to your family and friends.
Yeah.
In the state of California today, cell phones are banned in high schools. And so in high schools, now you have to ask permission in order to use the phone. So that's one I did. That's one thing I just wanted to reinforce, that teams are fascist and we're working with you to train the next generation of freedom fighters. I know we're sort of speaking to the choir, and I love being with you guys. But you know, Rachel spent a lot of money on these books, and she is only breaking even. And right now, I think this is true. The Striving Soul bookstore is the one bookstore that is carrying this book, and there are only 20 of us here. I think for us to be in the room, it is our duty to not just buy a book tonight, but buy a book for another person. Buy a book for 5 people. Tell people to tell them to come to Striving Soul on Saturdays and purchase a book so that everyone we know knows about this Cold War Truth Commission. Each person what did we say? The thing that I just told students 2 weeks ago for Club Rush, because when you're at the table, you might get disappointed when someone doesn't want to sign up. And so the key advice I gave to them, which I think is still relevant today, is you got to remember that we're only looking for the people who are looking for us. And with most of the folks that we've recruited to the Strategy Center, they have the ideas of communism and socialism and anti-imperialism, anti-racism in their head. They have not met the person, helped them conceptualize it to join that movement. And that person could be you.
Che Guevara, Legend Che Guevara, and Tom Fidel Castro. That's very good. Thank you so much. Thank you for the plug. And I think we can maybe wrap it up. I want to thank my partner John for all his technical help and you know, this help us hope everything around all the time. Audrey, thank you so much for helping set up and Melanie also for bringing us through, and also this is something a great warrior. I think we can, unless someone wants to share, I think we can end this. I would like to read the back of the book, which is kind of the mission statement. And here it goes. We consider the Cold War to be our nation's third and as of yet unrecognized crime, after the genocide of and land theft against Native Americans and the kidnapping and the enslavement of African peoples. Our mission with the Cold War Truth Commission is to expose the United States' illegal and immoral actions in its crusade against godless communism and to show how today's pervasive violence and injustice, both at home and abroad, is intimately tied up in the historic perpetration. Okay, duh, I wrote it. Perpetration, but I have to read 'cause I don't have my glasses. Perpetration of the U.S. Cold War, the Cold War Truth Commission, because it was never cold and because it has never ended. Thank you. Here's my gavel.
My court is dismissed for today. Well done.
Is it someone just let us know how to my books?
Oh, yeah, go in the back, right there.
Yeah, they're in the back. And they are pre-signed and a couple people who could also sign them who are in the book.
Yes, I wanna get some signatures on my little end, right?
Want to get all the signatories.
Anybody wants the papers to give out or
Yeah,
take
yeah.
any, James has a review of the
Sign
book
my
on the
book,
front
right.
page there.
Yes, definitely. Go around, please, to the people in the.
Oh, no, I forget.
Janet?
Hi, I'm Melanie Keller.
Station, evening, last night. I some Calvin, I kept doing this. I said, but.
Yeah.
Last time, they were getting something out of. Yeah, they were up there, they were.
Michael was. Then I'll ask you what, from year to year, and really weird, that's long that you. All. Now. Sure. Right until I see them about running. Yeah, I took it off and I go to my phone.
Yeah.
And I put on. Then I put on it before I go. That was. I did it, I did a lot before going on. It's fine. Wow. Story is, but if you told that, I was trying to. Almost 3 months. I just now. Tomorrow, and they can't tell me. I just try to explain their way.
You know, why is it? Yes.
Say, not about these facts. You know, no, my it. So what are you doing now?
I'm working on the newspapers. I'm still quite, think of like that, trying to.
Yes, I'm on that with, what's that young lady's name? One guy's a lawyer. Pacific, I no one. I called like, I meant when we did the thing down at the Black Power Center in Arlington Park. And we did that thing with Gerald Warren, that's when I met, what's the lady's name? Oh, God.
Outside.
Oh, no, the one who does the email for, we were trying to go, Bella, I met Bella. That's when I started. Well, I like those, that's right. They are close.
Yeah, so I do want to, and then I'll just say to.
Really good friend of Dave Redondo Beach from having a mall on a pier. Well, paid him, but I mean, took the case and he won. Yes. And then.
And then, oh, I'm on again, between.
I write that down. Say something. Listen, everybody up here so we can take it. All right, me do it. I'll do it. How does it work? Excuse me, everybody, before you all be feed and leave, let's all get together and take a picture. So we can get it up online and log this and promote the book and everybody spot it. Yeah, and then you get it up as long as you want. Yeah, but I go back wherever I can. Be probably right up. Or to get the car, so let's just really say, thank you. Okay. Thank you. That's what I keep my word. But I said, I'm on the Harvard. Like I said, so I'm just like, I do, I'm running, I gotta do something. Hey, Michael, we're getting. Yeah, that's good. I know. Okay. Everyone, Channing is working on it. Yeah, but we will. Everybody, at the table. Well, you stand behind it. Channing's on the case. He's sitting with the. Yeah. Got to bring around. Johnny, I can. For some, I'm gonna say that's some. Okay, I'll sit, I guess. Yeah, please sit in. Oh, oh, a little more. Careful. Yep, nice. I love it. Thank you so much, Melanie, for the idea.
I gotta turn Frank.
Oh, careful. We're gonna help turn Frank around.
Around.
Yay. Frank, we should.
Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. I can do it.
I'm
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm seeing that.
no,
I got you. Are you good?
I won't go that far.
All right. Okay. Okay, come back, wait.
Want to straighten out the sign?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Why?
I feel, this is so weird.
Yeah,
for
that's
me.
nice.
It's so weird for me. Okay, good. What, taking photos? Yes. Yeah, let me put
Okay.
it a little further to the side. Okay,
Endless.
I'm gonna put you by the podium. Is that okay?
What?
Wanna hold
I
it
would
up?
just-
Okay.
Come out.
Well, there we go.
Melanie, come out into the side.
All right. Here, and you hold up your book. Here, hang on. He's good. He's got the counting says he's good. Got it. Okay, so you get on in here, Pinky.
Exactly.
Everybody, hold the book. That's great. Hold the book. Oh, I don't have my book. That's okay.
Where you want.
Yeah.
Am I in it?
Here we go.
Move me around.
Yeah, come in, come in.
I mean, I'd be at wheelchair, bro. If my hip wasn't surgery, I might not be in it.
Wow, really?
Yeah, that's what.
Yay.
And then like.
Everyone look. I know.
Maybe out of. Kind of lower.
Oh, when you're ready.
Can you put on time if you get in the picture too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yay, good. Saying cold war.
Yeah, but you stop. Give them a pad. Back here.
Linton Quincy Johnson. Yeah, well, my guy is a great DJ. There you go. Get in there. And Cold War Truth Commission.
Don't prove it, but you went.
Wow, you're a pro. You're a real pro. And I might be one of them. I take pictures of it.
We're just case. Okay.
Yeah.
That one worked. I didn't see it.
I didn't see the shutter go.
Now it looks like it.
Cold War Tree Commission.
Oh.
I don't know.
You got it.
I'll take a picture. Let me take a picture. Hold the book. Have the cool cat.
No.
So that we have it. Oh, this is great, guys. Gonna take a couple of them. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Cold War Truth Commission. And another one. 1, 2, 3. One more.
Everybody, Melanie Cohen.
Come on, you guys. Which way is right?
On our website.
Just, I want to, before everyone, you see this fellow traveler EK? Quick story, the US put, with Salvadorans, put a bomb on a Cuban airliner. It crashed over Barbados, and the man who was responsible said, "We put the bomb on the plane, EK, and what about it?"
Wow.
And so, you know what? We're fellow travelers, you know, and EK, and what about it, right?
Wow.
Fuck you. What about it? So that's what this sign means. If anyone wants to take a selfie with the sign, but we just all took a selfie, but that's why I have this sign. Michael, you understand? You remember that? Pusimos la bomba, EK. Are we, okay, we're done. So wonderful. Thank you, Melanie, for the idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. You're not good.
Going into 11. Oh, I just moved.
Did it
Okay.
take?
Yeah, what are we gonna do? Right. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't need to. And just get some later. This was a good kind of while like. Looks like. Yeah.
Please, want to piece of the art from the wall? Anyone want a piece of art from the wall?
Yeah.
That's the look I know. If you want to buy it, they can buy it, you can.
Yeah.
I had copies here, I can give it their copy. I put out all the, you know, it's 2000. It's on my website. The older version.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so the, and, I'll be
But it's your attention.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much. Sure, but I don't have another. Oh, yeah. I'm not, it's punchy. I said, don't worry, it's behind the front.
I swear that. Yeah.
It's like 6 o'clock in the morning, so. I'm going, thanks, Carl. Thank you.
Gonna go out and I'm talking about. That's gonna be. It's a, get the roll. Yeah. I'm ready to leave. Here.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm sorry.
Not react. No, wash up on her. I feel it better when I figure out that. Yeah, well, that's why they. I see you when you're about to get on. Tell them I didn't, you know, some trade shops.
Yeah, so many things, so yeah, everything, that's right, but I've been, you know, other than everything, the average question. I also switch.
I was keeping the matter out. That word now.
I'm not retired, not that wide. Yeah. Everybody.
I think gonna give a ride. So you don't even have to buy all the. Or no, yeah, she has to be there at 4:30. I think we have to be there last night by 3. Okay, you're good with that, right? You're not talking about it. Want a book? I want a book. No.
It really is at least, how concentrated.
You know, author now. Yeah. Oh my God, I got so lost coming. I'm sorry. I don't think so. You know, Linwood. Like, it flashed back. And I left at 4:30 and I got here at like 10 a.m. through 6. Yeah, well.
I remember when I got on the get line, just before the French station, they were stopped with them, they were
Stopping it. Yeah.
So.
Back here. Someone did it about.
Where is it going? Well, no, that's. I really would like to take a film form lines. Oh.
There, did you buy
$20.
one? And it's signed. Yes.
Well, I know, you know, I didn't know where, if I could put someone, I could, I know that. I don't know.
Sale.
Like in all the domestic deals now.
I thought I was doing
Exactly, to cost. All right, have fun and see what, you know, what. Read it and ask me questions about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But seriously, yeah.
And I get questions.
So this is what I was like, the good stuff, like, this is what I was the night of the wedding.
Right.
Yeah.
There was one person missing, Betty.
Two. Then Eric was supposed to be here. Oh my God, yeah, the two. One of them is off on the, and she's south. There will be others.
Okay.
Thank you, and as a matter of fact, if you put the, well, very hard, put all of the on here, okay, yeah. Or take them off, take them off, but they just say, right back on there. And I saw some people writing down the titles, yeah. Yeah. But, oh, did you grab that? What's that? So the video of that. Oh, wow, why are you sick? That's excited. Yeah. Oh, they go back to the work.
I just.
Great, oh my God, that's. That is it. That is why, right? Well, that's fun. Yeah, I know, it's all I should have mentioned. It's nice, you get 580 drawing. We think there's a also good. Yeah.
It's so big.
Yeah. So I just, that gosh. I don't try to down here in the.
Yeah.
I think that's what you guys do. But,
Oh, that like rice garden. No, I'm going to read on there. So then I left him to Donald. I have been on like 5 minutes. Yeah. I don't know what. And I know you're going to French guy with Eric. So. Thank you. Thank you. I get you to the, I was like, I've been out, right? So it's like, oh, right. Yeah. Never return. They never. You know, they're still on still, they say driving the streets of they driving the streets of LA. She's like, yeah, it's all right. I know. Oh, okay. Oh,
I had me. I don't even see a word. Because don't put in.
Okay, go got it. I think the thing to check out that.
You're on the Insta under.
Yeah, I think you're plugged into this center now. I think you're plugged into this center. Channing's like great set list, playlist.
What?
He's like great playlist. Open seat Johnson. Oh wow. Lenny, this is your book. It is? Yep. Says your belly. Oh. Yeah, we have tea. Oh, yeah, but not yet. No, not rugby. My fault. I don't. No, where did this? Where? You know, I'm not the reason why. About that. Or I don't think so. But I don't where it's not there today. So that I saw it. It's not, but I'm fine. I like stuck on. Maybe I would say. Oh, there. Yeah.
Are these,
Irish stuff. American rapper. There's a draft like that. No, but no, it's not. Oh, but you guys a good one. The one that had the cold wood thing. Well, that goes around the whole thing, but hey, it's just like you know how to do it.
Right, the old lady was working on worship. There would be one page, yeah.
Oh, here. Okay, tell me. Thank you. So 2011, that's already done. There's 2011. That's what she said, the founding of Pope Pink starts with the verse. Hey, no, 2001. Oh, 2001, yeah. Right. If the allergic to 9/11, remember? Oh, there it is. I'll take that. No. No, this isn't. Oh, this is theirs. Oh, darling. I mean, any of the other little ones, the Paul Conrad. Oh. Well, I mean, it's not even. They give anything. One, if you have something to oops, then. Want me to put on a plate? Okay, just okay, then, I like it. The rest you can all have, that's not my fault. This is my, event folder. I tried this is the number, I had it like, oh my god. You know, yeah. I lost something like the other ones every time I go. Oh my god,
Honey, I love your. This is.
Then you guys can have. I just want. That's fun. Hey, sweetie, you can take some stuff back with. Okay.
Space.
Okay. Oh, Tina, this is all the back. I didn't realize you guys have a vibration. We're affiliated with Michael May, and I didn't realize that. What? It's just a bit with Michael May. I think it's someone I need that. Wow. Well,
I didn't bring that, I just brought it. Then I'm gonna close it to six, then I saw, and no one, stop, I have no, it was into that. And when I said, what? And then I found that I think it's house. Yeah.
Yeah, we got all kinds of comments on the line.
Right, shook it, it's like, and thank you, and so, you know.
You could tell. Yeah, I'm sure it's interesting you said that because they all stuff article. As well as maybe classes. So they had. I read them, I was like,
Yeah.
I said, that's like it was. I'm like, yeah. Lots of. Said.
Oh, wow. I can see that. Well, it's just, you